response video to the Modern Mystic on Vlogger Dome. Yeah. Alright. Anyway, yeah, well, I don't know. Sometimes you have me feeling like it's like I shouldn't be making response videos because somehow the subject isn't that interesting to you. But, anyway, it's a reaction video then. Oh, there's a lump on my head. Yeah, I have a lot of miseries. Little ones, but there's just a lot of them. Anyway, alright, filter, that's what I'm going to call it. It's the filter. You're calling it this pyramid of top priorities. And I'm kind of looking at like there's filters, you know, and the first filter is really coarse, and then it gets finer and finer and finer, you know, as you go deeper. The catching mechanism is, you know, there's a first thought, and that's that coarse thing, and then there's a second thought, and maybe even a third thought associated with a word or a concept or a circumstance. And I'm sort of thinking that this filter is, again, we're doing this, you know, how it's manipulated, what's manipulating the grading on the filter. And let's say basic theme ideas are going one way, and then your mood or the circumstances going the other way. So that would be the body reaction kind of stuff is part of that filter, and it's going to decide which, depending on which, the mix of those two things, how they move up and down each other, whatever, are going to decide like what words are what words are going to be the priority words. You know, whether the words tainted green or the words tainted blue or the words tainted yellow. Like each word or concept or thing in our brain is not only is it directly connected to other words, but it's connected to them in textural ways. So there's like a word that connects the words to the words. So you have the pathway that might be the mechanical pathway, like train and let's say steam engine. Like there'd be mechanical connections, and there'd be like you know, friendly associations like train and the story, The Little Train That Could, and that would be in yesterday's category, you know, the past or childhood or pleasant metaphor, or like even metaphor would connect those two words, train and metaphor, and train and cartoon, you know, would connect these words in these different ways. So I think that sort of has to be accounted for, because, you know, on different days what words are going to be on the top of that pyramid are going to change, obviously. So I guess, like I said, I'm just, yeah, you know, the right metaphor is always, you know, we could nitpick over that. I'm just seeing it as something that's, you know, basically our senses catch the world, and what they catch kind of depends on what glove they're wearing. So that's why I'm sort of thinking in a filter way rather than in a, like it's a thing you have to make first inside the body. It's something that's basically made to the circumstance. So depending on what the circumstance is, that decides what kind of glove you're wearing. You know, how much, how tight the filter is, how acute it is, what it's focusing on, whether it's focusing on mechanical associations or whether it's associating, whether it's, you know, prioritized towards threats, or whether it's prioritized towards desire, or these kind of things. It'll change what word associations there are depending on the mood you are in, the disposition. So I'm sort of with you on the idea that the body is the mechanism, but now we're back to like the lizard, the ape, and the human, and I like that for the dwarf thing. I'd almost like to give the human more than one personality, but that's, you know, don't want to get complicated. I mean, maybe you could have 3 humans, 2 apes, and 1 lizard, or something like that. Because there does seem to be, I seem to say there's more voices in my head than 3, but I mean, I could also say there's only 2, or I could also say there's only, I mean, it's hard to nail it down, because they can mimic other personalities. They could be just a fake personality. The dwarf could be just pretending to be sneezy, and then he's a very good actor, so he can be sneezy and stupid and chirpy. And, you know, he can be 3 or 4 different kinds of dwarfs, you know, because he's a good actor. So anyway, just getting back to that that metaphor So I would say the lizard is the body, and that's and the ape uses the lizard. You know, we could say that the ape hits the lizard with a stick, you know, makes the lizard create, you know, responses like bite its toe, and then it reacts to the bitten toe. And so that's sort of a feedback thing. And then you could have the feedback from the human who has thoughts, and then he associates things with something that is emotional, and that stimulates the ape, because now you're putting the carrot in front of the ape or the banana in front of the ape, the boogeyman or the banana, through what you're thinking. And then that ape gets a little whatever, and he jerks around with the humans and pokes them with a stick or whaps them with a branch. So there's this, it's almost like your gear work thing, like there's things on the different gears, and it's hard to get stuff back from the far away gear. It has to take a while to weave its way back through the gear work into you know, current perception, and that, you know, the feedback to our emotions are like that. So if it's coming from the senses, it can be quite immediate. But if it's something our brain has to first think of, like, I want to think about girls now, I have to filter the horniness, or whatever you want to call it. I have to first create the fantasy or the delusion or the you know, whatever it is, the idea. I create some imagery, some atmospherics, some aesthetics, whatever you want to call them. And then I kind of have to wait for the ape to say, oh, he's doing the girl thing now, you know. And then it has to filter down to the lizard that actually gets the boner, you know, or something like that, you know. And so it's a lot harder to do. I mean, it's slower going from the top down than it is from the bottom up. But like all of the dwarves they have the thing that they can get to, the, you know, like you can get there more directly. There's ways to make the body react, which will make the lizard react, kind of thing. There's ways to get to the core of it. I mean, you know, yeah, I can just do something overt and say lizard reaction, because I'm trying to get a lizard reaction, so I can do something tactile. So that might be the other thing. I don't want to get all sensual about it, but yeah, I mean, I could rub myself or do something else to stimulate the lizard and create a quicker response. And you know, and then the body imposes that through its own biology, of course. The lizard is, let's say, has all the hormones and has all the chemistry, you know, or the bulk of it. And yeah, I mean, you know, depending on how you write these roles, you know, you could almost cut it down to just two things. But I think there's an important aspect of that ape, because he's like the emotional memory, like what you learn over time. Like the lizard has a very short memory. It's just the same mechanical reaction for decades. You could be, you know, your reflexive reaction to a snake, and it's kind of hard to get over. And yeah, with time you can learn to adapt to it, but most people don't, and most people don't adapt. There's just these innate reactions they have when they're a kid, and they just stay that way. And then this conditioned ape, though, is, you know, he's made rather rigid, but he is more mutable than the lizard. And he does that through these learned experiences, like positive feedback, you know, positive rewards, and they get reinforced, and you can be reconditioned through that process. But it's a delicate, you know, that whole reconditioning thing, as I've attempted it throughout my whole life to recondition myself, and it's really difficult to do, because if you don't have a delusionary mindset, if you can't clear your brain from creating the negative thought patterns, you know, the negative context, you can't do the genuine happy thing that you need. You need a genuine happy to be able to do reconditioning. And so if you don't really believe it, you're just kind of pretending. Well, pretending isn't going to do it. Pretending isn't going to rewrite your conditioning. It has to be a genuine sense of joy or happiness, and it's really hard for me to create any of that, because I sort of have this back current of, oh yeah, but that's not the whole story. You know, it's like I can't get anything without sort of tainting it a little by saying, well, who made it? How was it made? How many fingers got cut off? I mean, there's all these cycles of of negative context that I'm always going to apply to something. So if I try to have a positive experience with other people, let's say, I'm sort of acting, and that's the problem, is that my body knows it's an act, or my body is getting mixed signals, because for every genuine positive reaction I have that would be reinforcing, my kind of damping thinking is sending these negative stimulus to create a tension that kind of taints the reinforcement, so it doesn't do any practical good in terms of reforming the emotional character of the ape. So, even though I would like to reconstruct pieces of my psychology, I've found it difficult because I can't turn off enough of the contextual brain to allow some sort of natural experience to take place that might do reinforcement in a positive way. Yeah. No, I was pretty good psychoanalysis anyway. So I'm sort of off the subject, but the filter thing I think is important. And I wrote down coarse and fine. Because as you go further down, the filtering gets finer and finer and finer. You start getting more specific about what words are associated and how they're associated. I wrote down muscle memory as being part of this, like the body does get these shortcuts, these really shortcuts, in terms of just learned experience, and validated experience, validated reactions, and so the body keeps those reactions that you basically say are okay with me, that you run away. And like I said, some of them are just awful hard to change. That's the problem with them. You're kind of stuck with what you first learn. You learn how to do it one way, and it's twice as hard to learn how to undo that. And so I guess that's almost a problem with even the human brain, the human dwarf, is that happens with human beings, is they get an idea in their head, they have a pleasant association and relationship with that idea, like God or something else. It's connected to their life. It satisfies them, comforts them. It does something good for them. And so it's very hard for them to create enough context that dampens that reaction and allows them to make an emotional break from that bad idea. And instead their brain will keep trying to find rationalizations and excuses and mechanism to keep the idea, because it's tied to so many, it has too many tentacles into their security and ego and all these other things. And the tearing of that out is going to leave a void that it's going to leave an injury, let's say, that has to be repaired. It has to be remodified, and the new idea might not have any of those emotional connections, because you're not going to be connected to it in your youth. So it's not going to have those automatic prejudices of youth. I mean, you can never be a virgin, twice. So there's a real disadvantage, that the second comer, the third, the fourth, the fifth has in comparison to that first, and that's just part of the nature of the structure. So it's a lot harder to get ideas out of the head than it is to it's not so much getting the right ideas in, it's just getting the wrong ideas out. That becomes part of the obligation of somebody who's going to make an argument and say, here's a better description of the truth. Well, to get your better description in, it's not so much just having a fair fight. It kind of has to rip those emotional ties off of that other competing idea so there can be a fair fight. But this is again another subject. Alright, so what else did I write down? Yeah, shortcuts. It's like I said, it's just about how the shortcut is metaphored in terms of how the brain accesses it or how it's built into us. But I think the shortcuts exist on all levels of all the dwarves have them. They're just shortcuts to different places. Do valuation. Yeah, again, so I think an important characteristic of this is that if you thought of sensation as just being a little kernel, something that is poked, I know you don't like this description, but I'll try it again. And it's just this thing that you could just poke, and it creates a value sensation, either a good feeling or a bad feeling, or, you know, queasiness or comfort, or pain or comfort, or, you know, whatever. You know, it creates some degree of this negative thing by how you poke it. And yeah, I'm sort of arguing that the lizard is sitting on that. And so depending on how you affect the lizard, depends on how hard the lizard presses on those buttons. And so that's how emotions basically get filtered down. As you have a thought, it goes through the gorilla, and he isn't as direct as your original thought. He's less direct, and so that creates a little nuance. And then how he affects the lizard is more nuance. So that's the nuance of these subtle emotional feelings where, you know, maybe the ape, in a sense, is pulling the lizard's tail at the same time he's poking the lizard in the eye, and at the same time he's rubbing his belly, and he's doing so many different things that the lizard is hitting is just hitting the buttons really strange on this little pillow of sensation. Or, you know, lizard is moving the levers in funny ways because he's getting mixed signals, and that creates what we call this emotional experience, or this experience where you're both happy but excitedly tense, you know, or, you know, I don't know how to describe, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, you know, that the thrill but the fear at the same time, like you're afraid and you're also enjoying the excitement kind of bullshit. Yeah, that's probably enough. Yeah, just I got this sore cheek thing syndrome. Anyway, yeah, it's just you know, I mean, it's a good pain to analyze, but it's just there all the time. Just kind of, not all the time, but it's there. And it's very, you know, it's subtle. It's not like horrendous. You can just kind of work through it. But it just creates this noise. You're just getting this noise from this side of my head. It's just making noise. You know. But, you know, it's more than just noise, because it has those little sharp pieces to it that just has little... It's just so jabby. I mean, I got to come up with a metaphor for pain that has that to do with it, because it does always seem to have this jab element where it just kind of, you know, it's this nature of the way it just kind of, and it's sort of like electricity sparking or something. It does the little funny, like all at once, boom, all at once, boom, you know, and so it sort of has that kind of feel to it, like it feels like that kind of, you know, like a spark jumping a gap in terms of how it does its little, you know, it's not always on or always off, it's always irregular, and there's something about that irregularity that's just intrinsically hostile to what's happening in my body, in my brain, my consciousness. Right? Consciousness is what it's about. Alright, so anyway, enough of a video, I think. Yeah. Okay, till the next time, and such, and so forth and whatnot.